Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Retrospectives right here on the Super Review Show. I am joined by my two good men, Mike and Kyle.
Hey guys.
What's going on, guys?
Um,
So, as many of you may or may not know, Ozzy Osborne just released a new album, and we're going to discuss it right here, right now. So, let's get into our overall initial impressions of patient number 9. Let's start with Mike for a change. Feeling.
Hey. All right. Well, once again, I am filling my cards with power. Listen to full albums of it.
Mike, I don't know if it's just on my end, but it seemed to be having some audio issues.
Ooh. Am I? I am?
Yeah, it sounded like you were like underwater. And it was weird.
Oh,
just for a split second.
Now it's good. Yeah.
Okay. You can hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
Am I coming in?
When you go to where you just went, the audio cuts out.
Really?
Yes.
Can you
you're good.
Okay, hold on. Let me try something. I want to see if I can. All right. Let me pull my headphones out. Maybe that's something. Can you hear me now?
Yep, gotcha.
Perfect.
All right. Okay. Anyway, let me restart. Sorry for the technical faults. So anyway, I have really been bad with listening to the entire discography of the legends, the Ozzy Osbournes, the Led Zeppelin, all these kinds of groups that a lot of people have listened to the full albums of. I've been like the greatest hits guy, and Black Sabbath Ozzy has been no different for me. And I'm a little ashamed to say that. I'm a little ashamed, so no judgment. But coming into this album, all I had to go on was Ozzy's kind of previous greatest hits, and not really understand the flow of the albums that he has and the themes and this. I was actually very happy with this album. I was very surprised at the consistency. And that basically, I mean, just how is this guy doing this? How is he able to perform at such a level? And I did notice there's some studio tricks on a couple songs. Obviously the guy's 74, I think 74, 75. And if you didn't watch his Super Bowl halftime for regular football show, they had to prop him up just to keep him going through the whole set. He didn't move once, and he's holding on to the mic stand like it's a freaking like it's hole, like it's cemented into the ground. It doesn't move. So but I understand it. But I mean, overall, my first takes with the album were just I was just very, very surprised at how just high quality, good, consistent that this album was. And I mean, straight across the board, I wasn't disappointed in any shape of the word or at any of the songs that were on it. So yeah, it's just like my first takes on it.
All right, Kyle, you're up.
I'm in pretty much a complete agreement with Mike on this. This actually really blew my expectations out of the water, mainly because I didn't think he'd be able to top his last album. I thought Ordinary Man was a incredible album. I thought it would have been honestly the perfect album for him to go out on. Lyrically, that's kind of like what that album had going on, was like very retrospective, very like looking back, introspective lyrics. And this came along, and when this was first announced, I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. And then I heard the full album, and it just blew me away. Everything about it, minus I think this whole thing, there were only 2 songs I didn't like, but we'll get to that, and one can't really count too much. But this really has classic Ozzy all over it. Like Mike said, there's definitely noticeable filters on his voice in quite a few places here. But again, the man's in his mid-70s. Astounding that he's still sounding as good as he does. Each guitarist on here also adds a lot. There's a featured iconic guitarist on almost every track. And each one really brings their own elements to the table. Just hearing Ozzy collaborating with Zach Wilde again is great. The Eric Clapton feature is great. And anyone that has tuned into us before, you'll know I am not a fan at all of having albums featuring a lot of people. But oddly enough, it really works very surprisingly well on this one. It keeps it feeling fresh throughout the album. And I really loved this album. Ozzy really knows still how to write an excellent vocal melody that really sticks in your head.
Need I say more, gentlemen? I mean, full disclosure, I am not, but I mean, Black Sabbath was one thing. His early solo career was another thing. Outside of what I think Kyle and I first talked about Ordinary Man back when it came out in like 2020.
2020.
Yeah, that took me by surprise as well. So, all right, this is actually a really solid album overall. A couple features like Elton John was on one track and whatnot, but going into this, I was like, all right, coming off of that, I mean, you're right though. It could have easily been his send off from in 2020, but apparently he was not done, and he decided to make another album. And you're right, featuring is one thing. I'm not great if it doesn't. But in this case, I do agree with you guys, both of you. The featuring did work a lot in here. Eric Clapton and Tony Iommi, like plenty of other features on here that were just really, they worked overall incredibly well, truthfully. And as a guy who's not a huge Ozzy fan, like I like him, but like I'm not like on the level like I bleed Ozzy, but like this was a shock. I enjoyed the living hell out of this. Truthfully, I was like, wow, this was something. I mean, yeah, there's like a couple tracks in there like I wasn't too big on either, but I gotta say, damn, like if this is his send off, then so be it. Like, you know what I mean? Like he knocked this one out of the park for me personally. I was really thoroughly impressed by a lot of this stuff. Given the Ordinary Man was like what it was, I think he won up himself too. And we talked about this before we went on live tonight. This is his first #1 album across the board, right?
Yep, first #1 on the Billboard, which
is a huge feat. Then he should go off from this one. You know what I mean? Like as Mike said, they're trying to prop him up on stage at this point with I'm surprised you couldn't think of the word cane. He just has a cane up there, but I don't know. But the guy's a legend. He has put out this release and obviously Ordinary Man as well, but this one really shined very well, and I was thoroughly entertained by the whole thing. There was a couple tracks here and there like we'll get into, but overall, solid record, big album overall for me personally. Any other initial impressions, guys, or what?
No,
we can get into the review of it all. And I mean, JT, do you want to start for once, like to talk about the album, or do you want us to start?
I guess I can start on this time.
Yeah, why not?
I'll read off the track listing, and I'll share some. I'll share some of my favorite, a couple of tracks, title track, whatever. So I'll share some of my love of Ozzy here in a second. But let's go. Let's talk about it here for a sec. So look, Patient #9 featuring Jeff Beck, Immortal featuring Mike McCready of Pearl Jam, Parasite featuring Zach Wilde, No Escape From Now featuring Tony Iommi, One of These Days featuring Eric Clapton, who I just saw, by the way. 1,000 Shades featuring Jeff Beck, Mr. Darkness featuring Zach Wilde, Nothing Feels Right featuring Zach Wilde, Evil Shuffle featuring Zach Wilde, I'm going to butcher that. Degradation Rules. Sorry.
Degradation.
Yep.
Degradation. Sorry, I know I was going to butcher that. Degradation Rules featuring Tony Iommi, Dead and Gone, God Only Knows, and Dark Side Blues. Me personally, as many of you who have listened to us or watched us at any period of time, I love title tracks, except for the last one we just did with Megadeth. Like, truthfully, that was a bit of a shocker. But this Patient #9 featuring Jeff Beck, what a kickoff. What a great song in general. Given that it's 7 minutes and 21 seconds long, I don't care. I liked it a lot because, I'm a title track guy. My other standout tracks personally, I would actually say, truthfully, this is my personal taste. I did enjoy my Immortal featuring Mike McCready from Pearl Jam. I like that one a lot. And the One of Those Days featuring Eric Clapton. You would think Eric Clapton working with Ozzy Osborne wouldn't work, but apparently it does in a really nice way. And this is from a guy who literally just saw Eric Clapton live a couple of nights ago at the Garden. great. But I love One of Those Days featuring Clapton and Patient Number 9 featuring Jeff Beck and Immortal featuring Mike McCready. Outside of those, like No Escape from Now, truthfully featuring Tony Iommi was actually another takeaway for me too, personally. Those are my like top tracks personally. I love. We talked about like featuring and stuff like that. Featurings on an album in general, I'm not that big on. But the fact that I guess he went out of his way to find these guys and said, look, I'm gonna make an album this way. I wonder if you can help me out with it. It worked out in that favor in my eyes, at least, which I was blown away by, truthfully. That's really all I have to say. I mean, outside of those four, those are my standout tracks, but the rest of the album is really good as well. Let's go down to Kyle. What are some of your standout tracks, actually?
My standouts were my number one on the album, Evil Shuffle with Zach Wilde. I love the groove. It had an amazing track. Other than that, Patient Number 9, song's over 7 minutes, does not feel its length at all. It actually goes places. It keeps it interesting throughout that song. Immortal, I agree with you, JT. I really like that one. It has like the classic 80s guitar tone, classic Ozzy sound on that one. Has really good energy. It's probably the closest to that old school like 80s sound that they go on here. Then the other one, I also agree with you on One of Those Days with Eric Clapton.
Mm-hmm.
Clapton's always been, one of my favorite guitarists. I love, his like blues centric playing style. It plays more with like feel than just showing off shredding.
Yeah.
That's what I like a lot. I also really liked the lyrics on that one. They're really, really relatable. Everyone's just had those days, either in our personal lives or just watching the news, where you just feel like everything's hopeless. And I think it's really good. Really every other song though were all either 8s or 9s in my book. I thought this album as a whole was just really, really solid all the way through until we get to the last 3 songs. I do like God Only Knows. That one is very good. It continues. That one reminded me that like the closest we got to anything from Ordinary Man. It's another one like personal lyrics. I think he was kind of going for that again. Not as good as what I feel was done on Ordinary Man. Still pretty good. But Dead and Gone is the only real song on here that I don't care for. It's not bad, but it's not good. It's just kind of there. It's just kind of a filler song that could have taken it out, and I don't think it would have made a difference at all. Then Dark Side Blues. What a bad way to end the album. I'll say that. I think it should have just ended right at God Only Knows. I don't think we needed a little bluesy outro. I don't want to say it's poorly produced, because it was intentionally like poorly produced. So I guess they hit the mark on that. It just didn't add anything. If anything, took away from the end of the album. I do want to point out though that there are a handful of songs on here that he co-wrote with Taylor Hawkins. So rest in peace, Taylor Hawkins. And they're all very good songs. Also, the amount of writers on here really just goes to show still that Ozzy was never much of a music writer, as he was more of, lyricist and vocal melodies, but, he does a fantastic job with that. Like I said earlier, every guitarist really brings their own signature sound here. I mean, Degradation Rules has such a heavy guitar riff, and Tony Iommi just really continues to show that you don't have to play fast for something to be heavy. And that's what I really like about that. People tend to, even now people think like, oh, well, it's not fast, that means it's not heavy. It's not the case. That is a super heavy riff there. That's really my take. It's really great. I do like the other song, Tony Iommi, No Escape from Now. That actually did a complete 180 in my book, because at first I really wasn't liking it. The first half of it, I was like, I'm not really feeling this one. Then about halfway through, they completely change it up and take it from like a slow song to, and then they like take the energy up, and it really turned it around for me. I ended up liking it quite a bit after that. So really solid album for me. lyrically, it's pretty much what you'd expect from an Ozzy album. It's nothing crazy, nothing great, but it's not bad, like we discussed with Megadeth. And the only other things I want to highlight is it does have some humor in it. I mean, we have at the end of Parasite, the "I like worms" line, awesome. And then I think is the end of My Darkness. I forget what he says. Do you guys remember what he says at the end of that one?
Yeah, he calls everyone an asshole.
Yeah,
He says,
yeah. Oh, yeah. He says,
you don't even know my name, you asshole.
Yes. Hysterical. I love the humor in it. Really, really, really good album. And it really stays interesting all the way throughout.
Mike, talking
Nice.
track listing, buddy. What do you got?
Nice. All right, so I'm gonna divide myself up into 3 categories here. I'm gonna go didn't like, decent but wasn't a great song in my opinion, and then I mean just best of the album, all 9s or 8s depending on I wouldn't say there's any 10s on this album for me personally when it came to like that kind of song that just it blows my mind. But to be fair, it's like a Ozzy album made today with like a whole bunch of people helping him kind of put it together, and like that to me is amazing in itself. So it's not like something you can kind of go around saying, oh, it's like I want this masterpiece in like in today's kind of atmosphere. This is definitely a win because that's a very hard thing to do. So yeah, we'll start off with didn't really like the songs. I mean, not horrible songs, but just didn't like compared to the other songs, and that would be Immortal. Just wasn't a fan of that song. Kind of just it does this kind of thing where it just stops and goes and stops and goes. I've never been a fan of songs where they don't flow and like they it just kind of seemed very clunky. Almost kind of reminded me of a U2 song, weirdly enough. I don't know how that happened, but because it's the guy from Pearl Jam playing along with it. But so yeah, and then also Degradation Rules. I just wasn't a fan of that song. The lyrics were the most cringy thing. I actually was listening to it in the living room with my girlfriend, and we both started laughing because I was reading the lyrics out loud, and I literally got secondhand embarrassment for Ozzy talking about masturbation. And like I was just like, mommy, please make the bad Ozzy man stop talking about the pearls hitting the ceiling. Oh God. All right. But let's go ahead and read a couple of lyrics from this part, which my God, by the time I was done, I was just all right. So let's see here. Twisted little fantasy, gambling with tragedy and doom, addicted to debauchery, staring at the ceiling in his room, pulling on his memories. He readies for the pearl to hit the sky. The sky used up all his energy. He wakes up with a twinkle in his eye. Asphyxiation, masturbation, degradation rules, sticky little magazines. He locks the door. Okay, Ozzy, stop. All right, I'm done. All right, I don't want to hear you, a 74-year-old man, talk about masturbation anymore. So yeah, ultimately for me, that's the like the song was like all right, but I couldn't just the lyrics were just killing me there.
Yeah, so when you put it like that.
Yeah, it was very strange, and like I was just like, what kind is this, like talking to people about the evils of like masturbating and making it the ruler of your life, I guess, and beating on your jewels. Oh God, why am I reading more lyrics from this? Okay, I'm done. But anyway, then we go into mid-level songs that I didn't hate, which was it just didn't hit me anyway, was Evil Shuffle. I know you love that one, Kyle, and I actually appreciate what you're saying. Like it has that Ozzy feel where it's like where he's talking and then the riffs come in and he's talking, it's kind of almost reminds me of some of his old Black Sabbath stuff, but it just for some reason to me it just kind of lost my attention. And then alongside Dead and Gone, and there was another head scratcher. There's like it just didn't bring much, and 1,000 Shades of Darkness or A Thousand Shades.
Right.
I think it was
Or
called.
just Thousand Shades, yeah.
That one, it was a nice song, but it just never hit it home.
Mm.
Like it was just like, here's a sad song, but there's nothing else. It just kind of did that and then like done, and it felt a little incomplete in comparison to like my Darkness, which fantastic song, has so many movements in it. It starts off with the sad thing, then it has a good chorus, and then it hits like this kind of cool, like straight up classic Ozzy Black Sabbath kind of sounding kind of part, and then it comes back with like the solo, then it comes back to the, I mean, it has such a good structure to it. And I mean, that leads me into my top. Oh yeah, another song that is my mid-level songs, and I know, once again, guys, I can finally be the enemy and the villain within being the person who praises this album. And my one track that I didn't feel was on top was Patient Number 9. I know that sounds crazy, but I know, unpopular opinion, but
Interesting.
the lyric, the vocals made me laugh. Like from the first time I heard it, the way he's kind of talking, like, and I can tell there's lots of auto tune on it, and kind of like he's doing it to be a little creepy, like he's the patient locked up in this ward or something like that. And ultimately, the song was too long, and I felt like it just didn't really grip me as the other ones. And also, when it starts the song off, it almost felt like it was a clip from like The Grinch Stole Christmas, like when he's like crying like like I want to go home, mommy, or something like that. And it was
not a fan of the overacted crying.
Yes, not a fan. It was very strange. It was very strange, and there's a couple strange parts in it. Another part that reminds me of a Jim Carrey thing is when he says, "Somebody stop me" during "No Escape from Now."
Yeah.
I was just like, "What the hell?" Like it just felt like there was a couple of Jim Carrey moments on here that were maybe he's sending a secret message to Jim Carrey. I don't know. Yeah. Ultimately, though, all of the people that came in on this did a great job of I mean, once again, one of my top favorite tracks is Parasite is right up there with My Darkness, and No Escape from Now has just a cool vibe. Same thing with Kyle. I was not sold on that song, and then as I began to listen to it more and more, I really got into the vibe of the song, and just like it really kind of was like a cool thing to listen to while you're driving down a street, like a dark street, or even like listening to it with headphones on, where you could hear all the layers of sounds in the background, either the high voice in the background or the layers of sound were just fantastic. And nothing feels right. Massive chorus that feels like something better than Ozzy could come up with, which is, if that makes any sense, it feels like almost like he tapped into a part of his original what's the word I'm looking for, his creativity, or his just kind of consistency with bringing a vocal melody that just gets stuck in your head. And I was just like, man, this is better than I thought he had left. You know what I mean? And I mean, that is, yeah, just kind of like that's an amazing feeling, just to be listening to an album and go, man, I did not realize that he could bring this kind of just element to an album anymore. I thought it was just kind of like hey, I'm Ozzy, I'm here, here's the sound of my voice. And that brings me to the last track of the album, which Kyle has talked about, Dark Side Blues. What's interesting about this song is that I'm not a huge fan of it. Also, it's not really a complete song, but I really honestly, truthfully believe that this song is merely to showcase how literal Ozzy's style of singing and his voice. You could go to any blues song in time, erase the vocalist from that, and overdub it with Ozzy's delivery, and you can see the origins of his style and where he developed, using the blues kind of like na 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 na, like you could overdub any blues song with Ozzy's voice, and you could see where he gets his style from. And it almost was just like demonstrating that to everybody where he came from, which I thought was really cool. But like, same thing with how I felt, the same with Kyle, as I was just like, like take it or leave it. It was more merely just to show everybody Ozzy developed from like that blues kind of style. That's where he came from, and that's where he's going to go out, like with everyone understanding that maybe his new fans don't understand how he brings that blues sound. So yeah, like I think that was a great demonstration, especially to those new fans who were like, I don't understand why Ozzy sings the way he does or where he got his ideas from and how he delivers his lines. Well, there you go. Listen to that last song, and you'll have your perfect example of where Ozzy got his origins from.
I think it would fit better in a different spot on the album. Like, I think if it was like an interlude, like halfway through, I think it would work a lot better than as the closer. Like, just having it close out the album just feels, something feels wrong about it. Like, it doesn't feel like a cohesive ending. Like, it doesn't feel like the album is concluded. Whereas I feel like if you ended it right after God Only Knows, it's like, all right, great ending. There's like the big emotional send off to the album. Perfect. We're done.
Yeah, I agree. It could have been like it could have been like, it could have been playing almost in the background, like maybe even diminished a little bit, where you can just kind of hear this playing, and then you hear like footsteps, and then you hear like a car starting up, and then Ozzy's pulling up to, you hear the screeching tires, and then it goes into the song. Like it could have been someone listening to it in a car. You know what I'm trying to say? Like they're in their car listening to this bluesy kind of song. They start the car, they drive, and I mean, sure, it would make the track less of a definitive track that has a track number and a name. And maybe Ozzy was like, they're all sitting at a table and he's drinking out of a goblet and he's sitting in his chair, and they're like, Ozzy, we really feel this song, and then he just like starts choking one of them. He's like, no, it is not song number 13. 13 is the lucky number. You know what I mean? And they're like, okay, Ozzy, okay, it's 13. We'll leave the track in. And maybe it was like a demand from him. Who knows? I would love to be the fly on the wall. But like you said, it could have been the song in the background, the beginning of another song. It could have led into another song. Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Can I just take a minute and just acknowledge the fact that there's only like a maximum of 5 writers on each song? Could we just applaud that for 1 second? It's Ozzy, it's Andrew Watt, and it's like 2 or 3 other people at most.
All legendary writers too, for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, you have the Rob Trollo from Metallica on the first one, Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses,
Chad Smith from Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah, he's on page. He's the drums on one of the writers on page number 9. What the name, and Chris Chaney from Jane's Addiction, which I'm just looking at it right now. But the one that surprised me the most, as far as writing goes, is Ryan Tedder of One Republic. I don't understand why that one song, but like,
yeah. So
the record label made it. No.
That's funny to me because I've never liked Ryan Tedder, and it's very rare that I'm a fan of a song that he's written on.
Exactly.
And I agree with Mike about that song, that 1,000 Shades, it's decent, but it's nothing special. It's definitely in like the mid to bottom tier of the album for me. So seeing that Ryan Tedder was a writer on it, it's like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
I'm just
surprised. It would be kind of funny though.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was gonna say, it'd be kind of funny if the record label was like, look, guys, Ryan Tedder needs to be in on this. All right. So it's like that new kid that comes into the class and he's joining your group. You're like, look, let him come in, and he's got to come up with some stuff. Like, you're like, all right, hey, how's it going, man? And he's just like, hey guys, what's up? I'll just be quick. And okay, cool, but just like do it and get out, you know what I mean? Like the record label's telling us we have to do this, you know. Like, I doubt it would be that way, but that would be hilarious if it was just like some obligation that they had to fulfill, you know. And
that was a great analogy. Just saying about like the new Kid Classic. Can I play with you? Like,
yeah,
Oh
the little kid, yeah, the brother that wants to play.
I feel like we've talked about it once before. He's the lead singer of One Republic. So like, why is One Republic attached to Ozzy in any capacity? I have no idea, but like, he's written a bunch of other songs too, like for other bands and stuff.
He's mostly a songwriter.
Yeah. But, I mean,
One Republic, a huge fan too. I'm sure.
He's just
like,
oh yeah, I'm sure he grabs a lot of influence from Ozzy.
Absolutely.
I've just never been a huge fan of his songwriting in general.
Sure. I mean, maybe like the hooks or chord. I don't know. It could be anything. I'm not I mean, I've listened to a lot of One Republic in my past life, but I'm not like the biggest. I've grown out of it. Let's put it that way. So, and just one other thing too, as far as the featuring goes, as far as like the actual featuring of each artist, it worked really well. Like the Jeff Beck, Mike McCready of Pearl Jam, Tony Iommi, Eric Clapton, Zach Wild. I felt these actually worked. These features worked really well. I know we talked about it a little bit, but as far as musicianship goes, would you guys say that the features worked in favor of the album or no? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah,
Wanna
absolutely.
go first, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it seemed like almost empowered the CD to come off and be even better. I mean, Eric Clapton, his kind of contribution to what was it, Parasite? Or no, One of These Days. You could
One of
just
these days.
tell.
Yep.
Yeah, you could just tell. I mean, it was just one of those songs that he just delivered the kind of the emotion to, and then you could hear every person's contribution to it, and it's just like it really puts Ozzy back where he needs to be as someone who kind of who adds the kind of the style and the effects to the other kind of the songwriting. And yeah, absolutely, 100%. I was actually happy to see so many great musicians. I mean, shredding solos. I mean, really elevated each song, the authenticity of it all, and just it felt like something where everyone there wanted to be there and actually got their full chance to demonstrate their abilities versus like, hey, just come on in and just do this, what we've done for you, aka Jordy. But yeah, like basically, yeah, it's definitely authentic feeling from them.
Had to sneak Jordy in there. Kyle, how would you say that the features, if they did in your way? I mean, you said that they did as far as like helping out the musicianship of the album, as far as like the actual music. How do you think they worked? I mean, obviously we all like the album overall, but what would you say? How would you say that the actual featuring worked in favor of the music in general? I mean, would you say anything about that or?
Yeah, I'm in almost complete agreement with Mike. They really did elevate the album. The last album, Andrew Watt, he's a good guitar player. He played guitar on the last album, and I'm sure he did on some of these songs as well, if not in some capacity, every song. He's a good guitar player, good songwriter. But with Ozzy, if it's not Randy Rhoads, it's got to be Zach Wild. If we're talking Ozzy solo stuff, love to see Zach Wild back. But really what I loved is every one of these musicians brought their feel to it. He didn't just get a bunch of just guitar shredders together. He got a bunch of people that have distinctive guitar playing styles that you can listen to and hear. Like you hear Zach Wild playing, you're like, oh, that's Zach Wild. You hear Tony Iommi play, same thing, you know who it is. Same thing with Clapton. Even same thing with Jeff Beck, Mike McCready. They're all great. So they all really did bring something to it, to the point where when I got to the end of the album, those last two real tracks, I actually kind of found myself missing. Like, I kind of wish someone was thrown on here as a feature, which is very rare for me on an album. Usually I'm not a fan of features because usually it just sounds like the feature as it used in today's music. It feels like people just write something and they get insert X rapper or singer here to lay down a verse that they don't really care about. This doesn't feel like that though. This feels like people that were passionate about what they were doing, and it just adds variety to the album. Like if we had every album, let's say with Zach, or every song on the album with Zach Wild, it probably would have gotten a little stale in its hour-long runtime, because it is a pretty long album for only being 13 tracks.
Yeah.
But because it changes up so often, you don't really feel that length. It really does go by pretty quick and stays entertaining throughout. And I just think it really speaks volumes that my least favorite song or songs were the ones that don't have someone featured on them. So I don't know if those were like afterthoughts they just kind of threw together and threw on there at the end. I don't know. But I think that the features really did benefit this album quite a bit.
I wanted just to bring that up because I know we always talk about like our overall take on stuff, but we never really like touch on like the actual musicianship to some extent, which I figured this would be good to discuss, like, featuring Mike McCready, featuring Jeff Beck, featuring Zach. I think that would be a good time to bring up something like that. I think that's something we could do more of in the future too. But I think just for this album in particular, it worked out well. So definitely. Any other concluding thoughts? Any other comments, questions, concerns moving forward for Ozzy at all, or are we all set to wrap up this show?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, if this is the last album Ozzy puts out, I'll be happy. I said that with Ordinary Man too, but who knows? Maybe in a couple of years, if he's not done, I'll be saying the same thing about another album. But I'd be satisfied with this. I think this is great. I can't name many people in their mid-70s that are putting out music this good still. I go way back with Ozzy and Black Sabbath were, some of the first music I listened to as a kid. Ozzy actually being the first CD, one of his greatest hits, being one of the first CDs I ever owned. So I go way back with Ozzy. I would actually put this album pretty high up there in his discography as, a cohesive album. Definitely way better than some of his mid-career stuff. Overall, really, really good. There are a couple of things that I wish were a little bit better in it. But for me, my final rating on this, I give it a solid 4.25.
Awesome. Mike, what's your rating and what do you got?
It's funny. I was kind of battling between two numbers, and I was kind of I was at a lower number when I first listened to it, and then as the more listens the more it went up. I kind of wish he had done something cooler with the Patient Number 9 theme. Like, I feel like the Patient Number 9 was there, but it would have been cool to have all the songs kind of accompany that name to kind of show this inmate maybe who's going insane and whatever. And maybe that is what he was going for, but it we were Kyle and I were talking about the sound of that Dark Side Blues playing in a car as someone starts it up, and have interludes showing the scene, the part with Patient Number 9 where he's like, no, I don't want to go, I want to go home, mommy, and stuff like that. That could have been cool, spaced out through the CD to kind of have this in the mind of this Patient Number 9, and to name the album after that song, but then have none of the other songs kind of, I don't know, maybe fit into it. It kind of feels like, hey, let's just name it this because this is the single, cool, but I would have liked a little more of a theme to go along with it. But I loved every song on it. I just felt like a missed opportunity. Sure. So for my final rating, I was definitely going to have to give it a solid 4 out of 5. I was sitting at a 3.8 or and kept kind of going between almost a 3.5, 3.8, but then I bumped it up because I just the songs that were great were just great, and the songs that weren't great were still better than other people's bad songs. You know what I mean? It's almost yeah.
Yeah,
I listened to.
I'm with you, Mike, 100%. Where at first when I listened to the album, the first listen through, I was like, yeah, it's good. It wasn't anything special, but the more I listened to it, the higher and higher it got. So on my third or fourth listen, I was like, I really like this album. And yeah, that just had to throw that in there because it's definitely, I don't want to say it's a grower because it's definitely good from the get-go. But yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. Even the songs that aren't great are way better than what most people could put out.
Right. Exactly. And that's kind of cool that can happen with a guy who's kind of his age, and it's good that Ozzy's brought his friends along, his puppeteers, definitely they've come along and they've kind of carried him on their backs when it comes to the guitar and the grooves and some of the emotions of the guitars and the vibes, but he's brought the like true kind of like Ozzy touch that like really seals the deal. And if it weren't Ozzy singing, if you were just to have these songs and take Ozzy's voice off and put in some other singer, and I don't know who you guys would all kind of throw in that role. It'd be interesting to see who you pick, but like, any singer who has a distinctive enough voice that you know who it is. It just, it wasn't Ozzy. It definitely wouldn't serve the album as much to have that missing from it. It would definitely be a gaping hole, and that's important because it's not just these guys who make Ozzy great. It's the piece of the puzzle that needs to be there in order to complete the other side, or you won't know what you're listening to or what you're looking at picture wise. So 4 out of 5, and that's a very hard rating for me because I am a notorious hard critic on albums. You all know Mike's the villain.
He is.
Yeah, I mean, send hate mail to 30. Never mind. Yeah, no. But
I don't know if I've ever heard you give a score that high, Mike.
I know that's a high score, and I do know why certain people rate it like between these. So like 3.8 to 4 would be like my rating, but like honestly, I'm going to return to these songs, and I think that's ultimately how I determine if an album is good or not. If I'm going to return to the songs and actually listen to them again. And I have certain albums in my car that I listen to on the way to work that are again and again and again because I like those songs, and I could see myself listening to those songs again and again just because they've become kind of they've kind of become like an important example of an aging artist who can continue to put out music that gives you a feeling. So that's something that a lot of people accomplish at this stage. So where I sit with it.
The Prince of Darkness has delivered, baby. The Prince of Darkness has delivered. Oh man. As I said from the beginning, I am not like, but no stretch of imagination, I'm huge. I like Ozzy quite a bit, but this album, you know what? I'm gonna be totally upfront with you guys. This is a solid 4 out of 5 for me as well. This is a stone cold. I would go back to some of these songs on any given basis, truthfully. Like, maybe if not the whole album at some point, like a year or two. It is that good of a listen. It was that fun. I mean, fun might not be the best word to describe it, but I really was thoroughly impressed, surprised, all the above. I love this album quite a bit. 4 to 5 for me. Need I say more from the Prince of Darkness?
There it is, man. There it is. I was hoping you'd say 3.9 so you could be the villain this time. We have a stalemate. Nobody is the villain.
I mean, do you want me to say it? It's up to you.
No, it's too late. You can't change your rating.
All right. 3.99 out of 5.
Yes, 3.666.
3.6 repeating. What?
Repeating line.
Oh my god. But bottom line, guys, but all around, we loved this album quite a bit. And it took me by surprise in general. What do you have to say about this? Please sound off in the comment section below if you like what you've seen here. Mike is killing me here.
I'm hanging out with my boy, Ozzy.
It looks like he's about to bite your finger off. I'm not sure what's happening back there. It's like exactly.
Yeah.
Let's see. That's okay. It's like, and Kyle's just like patting Ozzy's head in the background. I'm just kind of patting his head a little bit. There we go. Perfect. But ultimately, guys, what do you think about this? Jump down in the comment section below, share your thoughts on Ozzy Osbourne's Patient number 9. We'll see you guys next week for another episode of Career Retrospectives. So for all of us here, stay safe and take care.